Perfect. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna get started. We can all see the beautiful picture with the ship and the smoke mist coming off the mountains there, right?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, my name's Nathan. So I'll get started. And just so you guys know, if there's any questions, you can pop. There should be a chat. You can pop them in. We'll do a Q&A at the end. And just so you know a little bit about me, I work for Adventure Canada. What I do here, besides looking pretty in pretty places like Greenland here, is I help out our travel partners introducing these extraordinary trips to their clients. So joining me tonight, there's a couple of travel partners, and you guys are their clients. And Martin, my colleague, is here as well. He might help out at the end with Q&A, but I'm going to do the most of the presentation here. And I just wanted to thank everybody for joining. First of all, I know everyone's busy and it's I guess 6 p.m. on an evening. You could be drinking your pumpkin chai lattes or whatever, but it means a lot for you to be here, learn about our trips. And if nothing else, this presentation will inspire you to travel and to appreciate a very beautiful part of the earth that you might not have thought about before. So let's get started. So here's a summary of what we're going to go over. So there'll be some fun stuff like what do we do, how we do it, where do we go? And I'll go over what you can expect as guests on our trips. And then I'll do a recap of what sets us apart from other tour companies. And firstly, I'll go through a brief fun history, like a story of how we kind of got started with Adventure Canada. So the brief history, we were founded in 1987 by a group by these guys here.
Yeah, we're just not at this point, but that doesn't mean we can't maybe even be. Let me just give me a second here.
Valerie, are you in? I'm hearing Valerie.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, so someone was unmuted, but there we go. So yeah, so there was the main founder, Matthew Swan. He started the company in 1987 along with some other partners. They started doing rafting programs in Ontario, actually. And in this photo, it's kind of a cool thing. You'll recognize David Suzuki, who actually participated as an expedition staff early in the 90s. So they're doing their programs, kind of starting with rafting and then moving to camping programs. But eventually, they decided to bring people more up north into the Canadian Arctic, Greenland, and Atlantic Canada. And I really like this photo because it really illustrates where we go. You can see your eyes drift northwards, and that's where there's less and less lights, and that's where Adventure Canada goes to, and that's where we bring people. So it's a very unique places that we visit, and they're right kind of in our backyard here in Canada. And since the beginning, Matthew Swan, pictured there on the right side in the blue shirt, he's partnered with local organizations, local communities in the north so that we can travel in the most respectful way possible. We work with the community leaders in these remote places to ensure that we don't overwhelm the community so they know that we're coming. And we organize things like cultural ceremonies and things like that to make the guests feel welcome and to bring that cultural perspective from these remote communities. We try to do a lot of positive impacts as much as we can. So for example, on the last trip in the Arctic, we donated art supplies to Pond Inlet / Mittamatalik, the community on Baffin Island. And at lunch, we literally had 20 of the local members of the community who were our local guides for walking tours and for the cultural ceremony. We brought them on board the ship for the afternoon to have lunch with passengers. So it's kind of like they make us feel welcome in these communities. So we try to return the favor and do these unique experiences where you get to sit down and actually talk to the locals and we share a meal with them, that kind of thing. So it's very, very unique in a very respectful way that we try to travel. And today the family continues with Cedar, JR, Alana here who lead the business. So we're a Canadian company. We've been family run since the 80s. It's still a very much family owned and operated company. And yeah, Cedar on the left-hand side here is the current CEO, and she's super cool. So what is expedition travel? There are many definitions. It often involves cruise ships because logistically it's a lot easier to travel to these different points in the weather-beaten part of the world, but it's not your typical cruise. I wouldn't even classify it as a cruise. It's more of a tour company. But we bring a very educational approach to it. And one critical component to expedition travel is that we do have planned itineraries where we go, especially up in the Arctic. However, they can change on a whim due to Mother Nature. Mother Nature is really involved even in the summer where the weather is, typically nicer. There can still be a lot of ice conditions, blocking a certain place that we wanted to go to, or it could even be positive things like that we get wind of wildlife in a certain area that from another ship that we hear from, and we want to maybe take passengers to get this better chance to see some wildlife like narwhal or polar bear. So we do a lot of deviations to the itinerary, but it's actually part of the adventure. It's a really fun experience when you're on the ship, because we make passengers feel like they're part of the planning process. We'll show the weather charts, we'll show the ice charts like for the next day, and kind of say like, here's what's happening, here's option A, option B, option C that we can do, and we kind of make it like a fun planning process with the guests on board. So that's kind of expedition travel in a nutshell. It can change, but it's part of the adventure, and we as guests you kind of feel like you're part of that, that planning process, and you have to go with the flow and have that go with the flow spirit, and it's really fun. So some of the things that we do as part of expedition travel, it's about getting you off the ship, truly seeing the destination and connecting with the culture. One type of excursion that we always have on our trips are community visits. So I mentioned briefly before with Pond Inlet, usually what we do with community visits, we'll have local guides do a local walking tour, or we'll have sorry, that someone was unmuted there again. But we'll have these local walking tours included for all passengers, as well as it could be a cultural.
Yeah, I don't like it. Just it is rubbing.
Oh, sorry about that. Someone was unmuted there again. Yeah, we'll have like a local, like a cultural ceremony included as well, or it could be a food tasting ceremony that we'll organize for all passengers. So pictured here, just in case you're wondering, is Gros Morne, a town in Gros Morne National Park. So we get to see it's beautiful landscapes, but also you get to connect with the community, and you can chat up with locals. Locals are always very welcoming in these areas. So it's a very fun type of excursion that we do. And then Zodiac cruises are another key component. So most of the excursions are using the Zodiac cruises to get on and off the ship, because we go to very small towns. They might not have like a giant cruise port. So our ship isn't big. It's a small ship, but it's still, we need to usually anchor out kind of in the bay and then take these Zodiacs into and out of the landing site. The Zodiacs are very comfortable. They're about 10 passengers per Zodiac. And the good thing about Zodiacs, if it's not an excursion where you get onto land, we do Zodiac cruises as well. So you'll get to see things like icebergs and sometimes wildlife. It could be whales, polar bears. You get to get that up close kind of viewpoint from the water on the Zodiacs, and everyone loves the Zodiacs. It's a very relaxing sort of thing to be on the water and just kind of cruise through the icebergs, and even like seeing the scenery off on the coast, that kind of thing. So Zodiac cruises are a big key component there. And then kind of like the community visits, there's expedition landing. So it's the same sort of thing, just there might not be like a town necessarily. So we might find a spot where there's good hiking routes, and we'll have different levels of hiking that you can choose to do. It could be an extreme hike, could be a hike where you just kind of stay along the beach and look at the plants. And we have experts stationed on these expedition landings to provide interpretation. So you get to learn about the plants. So you learn about, if there's like a fossil, we'll find fossils, bones, that kind of thing. Though there might be archaeological sites and historic sites that we stumble upon, and we'll have our team providing interpretation about those sites as well too. So there's a lot to do on these landings. You can be as active as you want to be, or just kind of, again, stay on the perimeter and just kind of walk around and learn things from our team of experts. And again, there's going to be very scenic lookout points and that kind of thing, like always a chance to take photos if you're into photography, that kind of thing. And speaking of our team of experts, so learning and engaging is a huge thing that really sets us apart as a tour company. For our season and for each trip, we have a roster of different ologists. We'll have a geologist, historian, a biologist, archaeologists. We'll even have like kind of like the non-scientific ones, but even like artists, like so a musician, photographer for the ship, videographer, you can talk to and connect with. And again, they provide interpretation wherever we go and wherever we do these excursions. And plus, especially in the Arctic, as well as Atlantic Canada, we also work with culture educators. So in the Arctic, this would be Inuit culture educators. In Atlantic Canada, this may be Inuit if we're going along the Labrador, or Mi'kmaq culture educators. So we have that cultural perspective, and you learn with workshops on board from the culture educators. And we're really proud that we work with the culture educators, because it really makes guests feel welcome on our trips and welcome to the areas that we go to, which is a big thing. And again, we'll have the off-board programming where there's interpretation from the team, but on board as well, if there's a sea day or any kind of time between an excursion or after an excursion, we have a lot of onboard programming from those experts. So there'll be fun interactive workshops or just presentations where we sit and you can learn about glaciers or wildlife or the Inuktitut language, that kind of thing. And those kind of presentations and workshops really blow people's minds. For me, I actually was a passenger back in 2016 before I started working here, and the learning that you get on the trip really blew my mind, and it's one of the factors why I said yes to this job when I got offered the job. So, and also compared to a lot of other expedition cruises, we take the time to sit with passengers at meals, and even if it's not a meals, like during the actual cruising, you'll find our team hanging out in the lounges on the ship. And we really make a big deal. We don't have like our exclusive kind of table at dinner. We sit with passengers, we share stories. That's a big thing. Apparently, not all cruise companies do that. So we kind of make it feel like you're part of the family. That family run approach really comes into the experience on the ship. And something I learned from working here is that most of our first time guests, they travel with us for the chance to see wildlife and the chance to see these remote areas in nature. However, one of the biggest drivers of people that come back and travel with us are repeat guests is because of our team. And I went through our team, like they're very guest oriented, they're fun, they're quirky at times, and it's that unique learning experience, that enhanced learning that you get compared to other tour companies, that it's almost second to none with us. So I have a little saying on the slide here: you come in as explorers, you leave as family. That's what we try to instill on our trips. And this is to give you an idea of how many experts we have on board. So I took this picture. Sorry, it's kind of a grainy picture on my cell phone. I took this picture on the last trip. There's about 40 or so experts that we had on the ship. So this is like a whole like wall basically. And we strive to have a ratio of around, for every 7 passengers, there's one like expedition team member. So it's actually a very high ratio, because that's on top of the ship crew, on top of the ship staff, like the kitchen staff and the engineering crew and all those departments, which are important as well. This is just the kind of learning and artists and people who run the program on the ship. That's the expedition team. That's the high ratio. And another thing with our trips, for some people, these itineraries can be bucket list checkers, especially the Northwest Passage in the Arctic, or even seeing places like Lonsocks Meadows here there in Newfoundland in the picture. If you don't know Lonsocks Meadows, it's like the best preserved Viking settlement in North America. So that's part of our Newfoundland trips that you'll see. So these are like experiencing the history, whether you like these old explorers or not. Like these can be bucket list checkers, because it's very difficult to get to these places. So, oh, and yeah, if you don't believe me, you can take it from this guy. So I have a 2-minute video here. This is a person who works with us on a lot of our voyages. And he's going to give it's a 2-minute, it's a very good snapshot of what it's like on board and what it's like in the Arctic or in Atlantic Canada, in these remote places. So I'll play this video and let me know if it plays it should play with sound.
What is the hunger?
Can you guys hear that?
Yeah.
The yearning. The incompletion that drives us north. I come here for the sound, the squeak of wings in still air, the crack of glacial ice entering consciousness, the breath of a passing whale, the thrum of my own beating heart. I come here for the silence. Silence begets reverence. I come here for the unknown, the unknowable, the rainbow sheen of the aurora and the stars that point the way. I come here for companionship. I come for solitude. I come here for movement, to ponder currents in a changing sea, to be still, to take stock and start again, to touch the earth, to feel the earth surge and remind myself what is. I come here for an absence, to be lost, separated from the comforts of the known. In a place where if you look, if you listen, if you feel, if you breathe deeply, the land, the sea, the sky, the body scream, you are here.
Oh, right. Yeah. So you can literally do all those things up in the Arctic. You can touch the earth, breathe the fresh air, chat with locals and connect with the locals. So yeah, so that's a good video. I always like to include that in these presentations. So how do we go where we go? So the ship that we use for the Arctic, Europe, and Atlantic Canada, it's called the Ocean Endeavour. The capacity is 198 passengers, so it's not a huge ship. It's not a tiny ship, but it's not a huge ship. About 200 passengers. That's the size of the ship. And we have 20 Zodiacs. Those are the speedboats I mentioned earlier. 20 Zodiacs, which can fit about 10 people each. So that means all passengers can be off the ship at the same time, whether it's a Zodiac cruise or an expedition landing site or a community visit. And we have 10 different categories of cabins. So the different color blocks here just show you the different range of cabins we have. I won't go through every single cabin. It takes a very long time, but they range from shared dormitory style to interior cabins to porthole cabins with picture windows and then suites. And all categories have ensuite washrooms. So yeah, that's all the decks there. And then there's also actually, I'm just going to go back. There's also we have 3 lounges on the ship as well. And actually, I believe I do have a slide that will go through the different amenities on board. So one of the things that's good to know when booking these trips, so what we include are all meals, snacks, tea, and coffee are included on board of the Ocean Endeavour. There's all the onboard programming, which is always included. Like whenever there's a presentation workshop, anyone is welcome to join. The expedition landings and community visits are always, again, everyone's welcome to join those or not. And if there's something like a food tasting or a cultural ceremony in a town, it's included. Sometimes we'll even have museum tickets included in certain towns that might have a museum. We sometimes will organize museum tickets to be included for all Adventure Canada guests and that kind of thing. The things that are not included would be like the typical things with tours and cruises are like flights and travel insurance are kind of extra, but that's why you can work with your travel agent and they can kind of piece together that whole package with flights, travel insurance, anything else that's part of your overall trip. So that's why very important to work with a travel agent. They so to speak, put the whole package together. And as well, Wi-Fi and like alcoholic beverages can be purchased on board. So Wi-Fi is not included, be purchased extra on board. And gratuities are not included, but they can be prepaid. If you were to make a booking with your travel agent, you can ask for gratuities to be prepaid. And I'll give you a caveat with the Wi-Fi, especially up in the Arctic. It's not like just because of the way the satellites are, it's not always the most, even if you buy the Wi-Fi package, it can be slower than usual. It's slower than what you're used to at home just because it's the Arctic. So that's good to keep in mind when going these trips. Like don't try to work from the ship if you work from home kind of thing. It's going to be very not very slow, but it can be slower than what you're used to. So here's where we go in 2024. So our trips are run as like back-to-back itinerary, like a string of itineraries. Each one is about 10 to 12 days on average. We actually alternate between Atlantic Canada and Europe every year. So this year we started our season in Europe and we did a Scotland itinerary, a Faroe Island and Iceland itinerary, then an Iceland circumnavigation. So in 2025, we'll go back and do a Europe program as well. And actually 2025 is going to be coming out in, we're aiming to have it come out in October. So you'll see that very soon, and you can check with whoever your travel agent is, and if you want to look at 2025, check with them on availability. For 2024, this is what we're doing. So again, string of itineraries, and we have next year, one of the trips is kind of deep down here in Atlantic Canada, which visits Sable Island, which is very hard to get to place. Actually, that's one of the trips I'm going to highlight in this. There's two trips I'm going to highlight. So this is the Atlantic Island Odyssey, which includes Sable Island. So the dates for next year on the slide there, June 27th to July 8th. So this trip, it starts in St. John's, which is easy to get to. It actually ends in France, believe it or not. If you don't know, St. Pierre and Miquelon, it's a French overseas territory off the coast of Newfoundland. So that's where the trip ends. It visits Sable Island. It even goes to PEI, and there's an Indigenous community visit that we'll do there, which is it's always like a fun part of these itineraries. And it's a premium trip, like not just the PEI part, but it's very rich with Indigenous culture and Canadian culture. Like there's Cape Breton with the Acadian history, and then there's PEI I mentioned, the Magdalen Islands, which are part of Quebec as well, which are a little bit hard to get to normally on your own. And then again, going to St. Pierre and Miquelon, which is part of France as well too. And then we do France Way in Newfoundland. And again, just remember the thing you mentioned with expedition travel. Like it's not as much in Atlantic Canada, but it still can change on a whim in case there's Mother Nature, like extreme weather that we might not be able to land in a certain spot because of weather. So if you see something like France Way, don't bank the whole trip on seeing France Way in Newfoundland. Things can change. You have to have that open mind with expedition travel. With Sable Island, we have it planned in the itinerary to spend 3 to 4 days, so it'll lessen the risk of weather kind of impeding our visit to Sable Island. So 3 to 4 days there. And this island it's off the coast of Nova Scotia. Basically impossible to get to. I think there's another tour company that does helicopter tours there, if I'm not mistaken. But even then, like they change on a whim as well if you book, because weather can change. So it's hard to get to. You have to have a permit as a tour company. We take care of the permit. So we're one of the, if not the only, tour company going there next year, and it's very remote. There's no one actually lives there. There's a research station, but there's 500 wild horses there. That's like one of the main things of this island is that if you're into photography, this is a photography hotspot with the horses, with the landscape, with the water. So yeah, windswept sandy beaches. It's an amazing place for photos. And then just to highlight France, so it looks like Francois, but it's pronounced France Way in Newfoundland. So this community is actually very cool. There's no cars, so it's not actually connected to road. There's no road access, so it's very remote. And the only way to get there is by ship. The population is 89 people. They're extremely friendly. We usually organize like a community kitchen party type thing when we're there. So it's super fun. Colette can tell you more about that. She attended the kitchen party when she went on this trip. I haven't been yet. I hope they put me on this trip next year, because this is part of the Newfoundland Circumnavigation. Actually, no, this is part of the Atlantic Canada trip, sorry, but and again, if all goes well with Mother Nature, you'll get a chance to see this place, which is really cool. So here's the Newfoundland Circumnavigation. So this one starts and ends in St. John's, which is a bit easier to get to. We have 2 departures. This one's always very popular. It's a great way to see Newfoundland. Because with Newfoundland, you can rent a car and drive around, which is a good way to see Newfoundland. However, by ship, you just unpack once. You have your cabin on the ship, and then all your meals are included. So it's doing it by ship, in my opinion. I'm biased, but it's a good way to see Newfoundland, because you unpack once and meals are taken care of. The highlights here are Lonsdale's Meadows. I mentioned before, the Viking historic site, Grossmore National Park. There's Miapukek Con River, which is an Indigenous community that you'll get to visit. And this one also touches St. Pierre, France as well. So, and then you'll still get to enjoy St. John's, which is a colorful town, as you know. And yeah, and one thing I wanted to touch, so I'm going to go into the promotions and incentives that you can get if you book our trips. One thing that kind of leads from the last 2 slides, that you can actually book those 2 trips back to back. So if you remember the dates, the second departure with Newfoundland leads into the Atlantic Canada trip. So you can actually book them back to back. And if you do book back to back, or not even back, if you book 2 or more trips next year, we have a multi-trip promo. So this is the little picture I have here. Multi-trip promo gives you 30% off each trip if you do that for 2024, which is a pretty huge discount. We also are we try to be very family friendly. So what that means is if you have children, if you want to bring your family, you have kids, grandkids, it's free for children 12 and under, except for a charter flight. So charter flights sometimes are on trips, especially in the Arctic. Newfoundland, we don't have a charter flight. So, but the Atlantic Canada trip, we have a charter flight that you can add on from St. Pierre to St. John's. So the trip is free for children. It's actually fully free for infants 2 and under, even the charter flight, if there is a charter flight. And if you're 29 and under, it's 30% off. So we have kind of that like a youth promotion there with under the family friendly umbrella. And we also have a loyalty program, which I'm gonna touch on. We do have some promotions right now that are early booking promotions. So right now, let me just see my notes here. We have a few. So for Labrador, if you wanted to visit Labrador, we have 2 Labrador trips in 2024. Each of those are currently at 30% off. The expiry date for that booking, you'd have to get your deposit in before September 14th, which is next week. So that one, if you do want to see Labrador, chat with your travel advisor sooner than later. The other one is 25% off for Newfoundland Circumnavigation, and that's good till October. So you can think about that for a few weeks, but it's coming up pretty soon. So I would still, the earlier you do it, the better, because availability can also run out with our trips sooner than later. But yeah, 25% off Newfoundland Circumnavigation. It's 15% off the Atlantic Canada trip. And I'm going to go, the next few slides will go more into these other promos here. So yeah, I'm going to touch on this is one of our biggest incentives, so solo travel. So we don't charge a single supplement on an allotment of our cabins on our trips. The one caveat, I'm going to say this so you know in advance, the Atlantic Canada trip is already sold out of the solo allotments, unfortunately. Well, like it's good that trip always, like these solo rooms do sell out in advance because we have a lot of solo travelers who come with us. And again, what it means is if you want to have your own room in this allotment of cabins, you pay the rate that we advertise on the website or in the brochure. It's the double occupancy rate, but you get the whole room as a solo person. There's no extra cost for taking up the room. So it does sell out in advance. So it's good to check the availability for this with your travel agent as soon as you can. Newfoundland Circumnavigation still has some solos available if you are a solo traveler and want to get your own room without paying the extra cost. If the rooms do run out, so like on Atlantic Canada, for example, we do have a wait list, but you can also opt to share the room with a same gender person if you're okay to share the room, and that way you don't pay the extra cost. Or if you are really keen to have your own room, you can pay at that point, if they run out of the solo allotments, you can pay 1.5 times the cruise rate, and you'll get that's kind of the single supplement rate if they run out of our allotment of solo rooms. And I thought I had a slide there, but there's also we have a loyalty program. So if you do travel with us, or if you have traveled with us, some of you may have traveled with us in this webinar, you're automatically enrolled into our League of Adventurers program. So it's a loyalty program. It gives you further discounts on future trips, basically. And so if you go to the Arctic one year, you can go to Atlantic Canada the next year, or do Europe if it's next year or the year after. So there's a lot to choose from, actually. We do have a very big amount of repeat passengers on our trips. So speaking of that, our guest profile. So on average, the guests are 55 to 75 years old. However, this is expanding. There's more and more, I've noticed more and more young professionals, millennials coming onto our trips, and it's getting to be, a bit of a mix, which is great, because everyone's there, like kind of together at university to make the most of learning and connecting with each other. And like everyone's there like in that vacation mode and just wanting to learn and soak in like knowledge. So even if there's a big age range, it's everyone kind of feels like family after, and you make lifelong friends. But there's always people who are in their 80s and 90s as well too. So it can be a mix, which is awesome. And again, just going back to the expedition travel in general, you have to have that open mind, willingness for change, because conditions in the north can change on the fly for a number of reasons. So just kind of have that go with the flow spirit, and it's part of the adventure. It is casual on board, very casual ambience. You don't have to dress hoity-toity. You can bring hoity-toity stuff if you like, but it's very casual on board. People wear shorts and You know, there's no like dress code requirement in that regard. It's very casual. There's a note on mobility. Due to where we go, like the nature of landings and the infrastructure up in some of these remote places, you'll need to be able to walk up and down steps, like or walk into and out of a zodiac, basically, which is kind of like walking, you know, up and down steps, but it can be your own pace. There's always assistance going in and out of the zodiacs. We do a thing called the sailor's grip, where we help you like in and out of the zodiac. Even if you say that you're very fit and you want to jump in the zodiac, we'll tell you like, no, like do the sailor's grip just for safety. We do that with everybody. There's assistance, but just know that the mobility required is to kind of walk up and down steps at your own pace, and there's help required, but that's the mobility requirement for these places on this type of expedition travel. So some other quick notes. So the trips, you'll see that our trips are advertised in US dollars. We are a Canadian company, but the reason for that is because the shipping industry globally is operated in USD. So there's always currency fluctuations. So for consistent sakes, we list pricing in USD. So that's the reason why. There is a gift shop we have on board, which is positioned in Canadian dollars for purchases. And that's set up once you're on board, but the actual trip itself is in USD. Another cool note is with our trips, each passenger receives this nice blue Adventure Canada expedition jacket. It's included in the price of the expedition, and it's yours to keep afterwards. So you'll get a great jacket to keep. We also provide complimentary rubber boots and walking sticks for travelers to borrow. So not to keep, but to borrow on each trip. So you don't have to pack your own like rubber boots because sometimes the landings, especially like the landings where it's not a community, there might be what we call wet landings. So you have to step in a couple inches of water on a beach because it's, again, very remote landscapes that we're going to. So we do provide the rubber boots for that. And we do have walking sticks for any of the people who want to do hikes on those excursions. And we also have a kayaking program. So this is not included in the itinerary. It's an add-on that you can add on, and space is very limited on these. So if you are into kayaking and you've done like sea kayaking or ocean kayaking before, this is a really cool way to see the Arctic or Atlantic Canada. Like the Zodiac is one thing, but this is a whole nother, because you're right there on the surface of the water. You're right there seeing, just being on the water and seeing the landscape in a whole different way. So the kayaking is really cool. There's an application process and there's limited spots on each departure. So ask about this ASAP if you do want to join it. It has to be pre-booked and approved by us. And it's, again, an additional cost, but it's well worth it. The kayakers are always, I've seen them. I haven't done it myself. I'm not a big kayaker, but the kayakers on the trips are always having a good time and talking about what they saw. So it's a cool program. And we do have bike rentals. So these are also they're an extra cost as well, but they can be pre-booked, like, or not pre-booked, they can be like signed up for on the trip. You don't have to know that you want to do it in advance when you're booking the actual trip. On the actual trip itself, you can sign up the day before if you want to rent a bike in some of the communities that we visit. And it's about $40 Canadian for the day to have a bike. It's a good way to see the community because you can just kind of, they're small enough that you can like ride from one side to the other fairly easily and see the whole community without walking. You know, so the bike rentals are a good add-on that we have. And I wanted to touch on the charter flights again, just to explain this. So for those two trips I mentioned, Atlantic Canada and Newfoundland Circumnavigation, Newfoundland Circumnavigation there's no additional charter flight, but for Atlantic Canada, which ends in St. Pierre, which is that island owned by France, we do have an add-on charter flight that goes from St. Pierre to St. John's, because flights from and to St. Pierre there's not many. So it's not an easy place to get back from. So we do have an add-on charter flight. For that trip, it's $495 US per person. You can add on. It's, again, an optional add-on. Most people do it because it's hard to kind of, you know, make your own way there. But especially up in the Arctic, we'll usually have charter flights for our Arctic trips. So instead of getting to Greenland on your own, you can start the trip in Toronto, or it might be another city in Canada, and then you start the trip in Toronto, then we have a charter flight from Toronto to Greenland, and the ship meets us in Greenland. So it's a good way it's a good thing to do for making it easy to get to Greenland. So these are the booking conditions, just to give you a snapshot. So to confirm a booking, you book with your travel agent, and it's we have a registration form that you fill out. It's basically just your name, date of birth, that kind of thing. You can put your credit card info in there if you want to pay by credit card, and you can fill that out with your travel agent. And it's a 2,000 USD deposit. So you book the deposit, and then final payment is 120 days before departure. So you do the deposit, you're locked in, and then you pay the final payment later on, a couple months before the actual trip starts. We have a requirement for travel insurance, especially if we're going to remote areas. We want people to have at least 500,000 USD coverage for medical emergencies. So travel insurance is something that, again, you can work with your travel agent. They can find the best travel insurance package for you. And I also listed the cancellation and change rules, just a snapshot there. So like most tour or cruise companies, the way the cancellation and changes work is that it's flexible for you to change and cancel the trip the earlier in advance that you do it. As you get closer and closer to the departure date, it becomes less flexible. And the reason for that is because things get booked on the back end. So that's a good reason to have part of travel insurance is trip cancellation and interruption coverage. So again, you can work with your travel agent if you need to get trip cancellation interruption coverage. So it can cover things that are out of your control if you have to cancel the trip, very close to the departure, because there's going to be less flexible penalties the closer you get to the trip. And that's the same with any other tour or cruise company. So things that set us apart. This is one of the very last slides here, but hopefully you guys have learned a lot in this presentation. You can probably present at this point and tell me some things that you think set us apart, but I won't put you on the spot. So I'll show you what I wrote here. So one of the big things again is the no solo supplements. And these are categories 3 to 7 on our Ocean Endeavor ship. Again, spaces can go very fast. So if you do want to get a solo room, check with your travel agent ASAP, and they can check the availability for you. We're the longest running tour operator in the Canadian Arctic, and we've been, again, doing it since the 80s, and we have very long lasting relationships with a lot of community leaders up north. So they know us, we know them, and we do everything we can to travel in the most respectful way possible. We will set up donations and that kind of thing in certain communities as well to help out with because in the Arctic it's very expensive for them to ship things like sports equipment up north. So we actually have a partner with Project North, which is a nonprofit. We'll give some of our cargo space on our charter flights for sports equipment and do donations like that. So it could be non-monetary, monetary. We have a whole list of partners that we've been working with for a long time, especially up in the Arctic, a lot of organizations. And we have a strong focus on highlighting and learning about Indigenous cultures. So they're at the forefront, and we work with Indigenous culture educators. We always have 4 or 5 or 6 culture educators as part of our team on board to provide workshops and all those fun things. And yeah, talking about that, the workshops, our education programs are second to none. They're mind-blowing, in my humble opinion. And our team is fun and guest-oriented. We'll sit with you for meals. And you really, even with our team, not just the other passengers, but you'll make lifelong friends with passengers and our team as well too on these trips. So here's a fun little video that me and Colette we filmed. I think it's a minute long, and me and Colette were in Greenland last month, and we thought we'd put this at the end of the webinar here, so I'm just going to play it.
Hi, it's Colette at Creative Travel and Tours. Joining us in Sissumet, Greenland, I have Nathan here from Adventure Canada. Nathan, tell us more.
Yeah, this is one of our itineraries, the High Arctic. And if you've already been to the Arctic or been on our Arctic trips, we also do Atlantic Canada and Europe and some other specialty places like Antarctica and Haida.
And don't forget Circumnavigation of Newfoundland.
Yeah, that's a good one. So if you do want to book any trips with us, Colette is your travel agent. And thanks for joining our webinar, right? Thanks for joining our webinar.
Yeah. Welcome. See you soon.
See ya.
That's right. I think the sound is very faint. It was filmed on my cell phone, but yeah, that's us just saying thanks for joining our webinar. And this was in Sissumet, Greenland, so it's a very picturesque town with the colorful houses there, and it's right on the water. It's a super nice place to visit. But yeah, so to book, you just reach out to your preferred travel agent, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next adventure. I might even see you on the ship, but yeah, looking forward to the next adventure. So if there's any questions, I can take a look at the chat now.